early 1870s, the peach farmers of Middle Georgia began to develop the peach industry. From the graft yielding the first Alberta peach in 1872 to the multi-million-dollar Georgia peach farms of today, the story of the Georgia peach is unique. This film is a compilation of interviews, reflections on an industry not many know much about, telling the tale of what it is like to be Georgia's peach farmers.
My name is Robert Lee Dickey II. I'm named after my grandfather, and my grandfather started in the peach business in 1897, right here in Musella, Georgia. He ran a general store, and he was a depot agent and an undertaker. And he decided to diversify and planted 3,000 Alberta peach trees in 1897. And picked his first peaches in 1900 and shipped them to New York to a friend of his who was a commercial broker in New York. And we've been in the peach business ever since.
My mother was Mary Rumph, R-U-M-P-H, and the Rumph family is kind of synonymous with the beginning of peaches in America back in the 1800s. My great-great-grandfather was Louis Rumph, and he had there were two boys, and out of one of those sons came Samuel Henry Rumph, and his nephew, his uncle, was my great-granddaddy, and those two Rumph fellas were farmers in the 1800s.
It was at this farm between Fort Valley, Georgia and Marshallville, Georgia around 1870. Samuel Henry Rumph, along with his uncle Louis Rumph, began grafting peach trees spawned from Chinese cling. The result, a sweet yellow flesh peach that would bring a strong price at market. Undoubtedly the most famous of the Georgia peaches, the Alberta, named for Samuel Rumph's wife, Clara Alberta, today is rarely shipped commercially. But its impact seeded the peach industry. Work would be long and hard, and for families in peaches, it would be all they knew.
We actually got started working at the packing house back in the days when if you were to try to do that now, the wage and hour people would lock you up. But we actually started working at the packing house at the ripe old age of 7 and 8 and 6, and as I remember, those were the ages when most everybody could work, you know, and particularly the owner's sons.
We had little jobs, you know, cleaning up, sweeping up, picking up peaches that fall off the conveyor belts and that type thing, and you'd make, you know, $7, $8, $10, $12 a week, something like that. But the football, basketball coach, Mr. Faircloth, he would, during the summertime, he'd run the packing shed up there for John David, who was my great-granddaddy. And so, you know, he knew all us kids, because, I mean, we were all in school, you know, so that the principal of the school was, and I mean, coach of the school, you know, running the packing house. So he used to pay off at the end of the week. I can remember him. He had these little brown envelopes and have everybody's name handwritten on there, and cash would be stuck down in there, pennies and dollars and all. And he'd call out people's names. You'd stand in line and get your money, you know. And I can remember making, you know, $8, $9, $10, $11 a week, you know, tickled to death. If you made 12, you really did good.
Start early in the morning, pretty much work most of the day. I'd drive the tractor, help empty the buckets of peaches in the boxes, move the boxes around on the trailer, and then I would help pay the pickers. I remember paying $0.10 a bucket, and that would mean me holding probably, I remember having at least $200 in dimes in my pockets. They would be bulging out every morning. And the pickers would come up, empty the bucket of peaches in the box and hold the bucket up, and I would throw a dime or chunk a dime in the bucket. And I would do that from one end of the wagon to the other. I got to be a pretty good shot throwing dimes.
One of my first jobs I'll never forget was what we call it beating baskets. And that entitled, when the baskets came in from the manufacturer, they were all stuffed together, 10 or 12 at a time. And my job was, we had our own little, it was made out of wood, and it was what we called just a beater, and I would actually beat the baskets to separate them individually, and we'd all pile them up, and we sent them down a chute individually, and then the person that was doing the filling of the peaches was obviously using that basket, so we had to keep that chute furnished, and that was one of my first jobs, upstairs working in my great-grandfather's packing shed, beating baskets. And I think I made 25 cents an hour.
I got promoted as I got older. I was a teenager. I would say I was about 13 or 14. I got promoted to the hardest job you can imagine at the peach packing house, and that was to pick up the bushel of basket of peaches and dump them on the conveyor belt. And when you see that truck coming in with all of those peaches, you say, oh my God. We thought about the fact that we were making money, but those peaches got heavier and heavier. And as we would dump them on the conveyor belt, the ladies would fill the peaches, and those that were soft, they would pick them out and put them on a conveyor belt above their head.
One of the first real jobs I had in a peach orchard was a water boy. I was maybe 6 or 7, maybe 7 years old, and he'd have a big bucket full of water and with a dipper in it, and you'd take them around to the people. They would, when they got thirsty, they'd say, water boy, water boy. They'd holler out through the fields, and we would rush over there and give them a drink of water out of the big bucket with a dipper, and usually it was cool water. And I was a water boy for several years, and then I sort of got promoted up when I got about 8 years old to a bucket boy. When they got that bucket full of peaches, they would say, bucket boy, then you carry them a bucket where they wouldn't have to stop picking.
I drove 2 mules in a 500-gallon water tank, and I used to haul water all day for the people to drink, you know. They used to come from town in the morning, and they used to put a 100-pound ice in that water. It was a wooden keg, and that water would stay cool all day long.
My dad never allowed us to go to the peach orchard, and I really wanted to go to the peach orchard because, see, your girlfriend went to the peach orchard, and you wanted to go also.
During the first half of the peach industry, nearly 5 million peach trees covered the Middle Georgia landscape compared to just 500,000 today. A small insect known as the plum curculio developed a taste for the new Georgia peach, devastating many crops. Before the development of arsenic-laden pesticides and later less toxic chemicals, farm workers toiled feverishly to rid themselves of the parasite.
Back in those years, you didn't have a good chemical spray, and you didn't have good equipment to spray, so they would go out and bump the tree when the tree, first, a lot of peaches on the tree that needs thinning anyway, but the worms, the weevils will sting the peach, and then when you bump that tree, all those bad peaches would come off. Most of them had worms in them, and our job was to pick them up. When you took a bucket and go out and pick up little old bitty tiny peaches, about like big as a housefly, and it's all afternoon. You may get 3 trees, and you would pick them up. They'd take them, put them in a bag, and go throw them in the creek. You know, they thought they was getting rid of the weevils for the next year.
Tree right here, you bring one sheet in this side, and you can let it overlap here, and then bring the others over here, and you'd cover the entire area under the tree. And when you bump the limbs, you'd find out about the insects that was on the tree. After a period of time, they'd be sullen right at first. They wouldn't move. After a while, they'd sort of come aware of the situation, and they'd start crawling, and we'd pick them up and put them in a Pepsi bottle with a little kerosene in there.
talk about them in past tense after that.
Of course, the old saying is that what's worth it, biting into a peach and seeing a worm? And the other fellow said, well, biting into a peach and seeing a half a worm. It's terrible, but we did have wormy peaches, and we didn't have as many chemicals then to fight the boll weevil as we do now. We only had arsenic or lead.
They would take sheets and put them on the ground and bump the tree. The peaches would fall. They would collect those peaches and haul them off. And one statement I heard said that they stopped up the Flint River by dumping peaches in it. Now, I don't know that they did that, but they did everything they could do to get the worms out of peaches, and they were moderately successful.
Ever taunting the Georgia peach farmer, frost. A late frost near the full moon around Easter time after peach blossoms have bloomed can annihilate the entire season. While there have been several such freezes, the worst in memory seems to be that of 1955.
1955, we lost everything. I say we did. The whole state of Georgia and South Carolina too. Lost everything. Coming down free. Got down to 16 degrees. I remember it on a Saturday night. I remember that. And I remember something else. I was out here on this farm working that Saturday. Oh, didn't I? You know, we had peaches. We had peaches on the tree. This would come along in late March the 27th, I think it was.
I remember the month of March and early April being real stressful times. You watch the weather forecast a lot. You always worried about the frost coming in and wiping out your peach crop. I never remember a total wipeout year. I know the year I was born in '55, it was a disastrous year.
The last week in March, we had a freeze, and we didn't ship one peach from Peach County that year. Wiped out the whole industry at one time. Now, it was the worst it ever was, but there were other times when it was just about that bad. And of course, when everything went well, you had more peaches than you could sell. So it was always a treacherous thing, even when times were good.
I do remember on that night in that particular year that when they said the freeze was coming in, and back then it was legal to burn tires. Anyway, that's the way to get rid of them. And we and all the people went around to all the tire businesses and got tires and built fires out and trying to get a smoke over the peach orchards to keep the frost. It would do good on frost, but it got down, I think, in the teens, low 20s, and where the peaches were early that year, and so it killed them anyway.
And nearly nothing compares to the ever-present threat of hail in testing the patience and stamina of the Georgia peach farmer.
It happens, and you have hot days, and you see the thunderclouds coming, and it's in your mind. I was being interviewed at our packing shed one time, and the cameraman, we looked outside, and there was hail beating off the hood of my truck. And I was proud that I held myself back, because he looked at me with the camera and tuned in on me and asked me how did I feel right then. Well, what I felt like was socking him because I was about to throw up. But it was so localized that it was only at my packing shed. We really didn't lose any fruit. But when I was looking out and seeing that stuff bouncing off the hood of my car, I didn't want to be interviewed or questioned by any journalist.
Well, when you see a hailstorm coming in, you just get sick at the stomach, because you know, the old saying is, hail is good for nothing. I mean, it doesn't do anybody any good. I mean, sometimes people want more rain to make the grass go for the cattle, and some people want it dry where they could plow the land and everything. Some want it wet, some want it dry, but nobody wants hail. Hail doesn't do anybody any good. and it destroys everything. I mean, I've seen hail just tear up a peach orchard, and nothing to do but you just, like I said, you just get sick at the stomach.
We had hail that was part of a storm system and hailed all the way from the Flint River to the other end of the county, to 41. And it was my estimate at the time that it affected 1,000 cars of peaches. There was an attempt made to ship some of those peaches, and they were shipped. And that summer, we were already in the peach packing business, and I was operating the packing house. But I was asked by my sales agency to take a trip to New York and check on some peaches of another grower that the agency in New York said was giving them problems. They asked me to fly up there and take a look for them. And I did. And on the plane, when the stewardess came around, she had some peaches. And I said, I can tell you exactly where those peaches came from. They had the hail mark on them.
In the early 1900s, peach season meant jobs for nearly all who applied, and many peach farms built hotels to house workers from all over the state. For some, it was bread and butter, others, a means to pay for education and a brighter future. The walls of this hotel at Lee Pope Farm still bear the signatures of those who came to work in peaches.
It was an interesting thing. It was a good thing for boys my age to come up through there. We would work all night sometimes. And never did make a lot of money, but we made enough to make it worthwhile.
The development of a rail car capable of being packed with ice and keeping peaches from rotting became Samuel Rumpf's second legacy to the peach industry. Within 30 years, as many as 8,000 cars packed with Georgia peaches were delivering their cargo all along the East Coast. Peaches began gracing the tables of average American consumers by the turn of the century. By 1928, an estimated 18,000 rail cars left Fort Valley headed to market. The largest ice plant in the country and second largest in the world was built in Fort Valley. Had it not been for two major advancements in the peach industry, peaches would not be the American tradition they have become. Hydrocooling and refrigerated shipping paved the way to market for the Georgia peach.
I can remember as a little boy riding with those truck drivers. It was a real thrill to get in that truck and ride out to the ice house. They'd back up to the dock, and I can see them right now with those big clamps dragging those huge blocks of ice, almost as big as a sofa, onto the trucks, just an open truck, you know, just with sides on it. And then they would drive up the packing shed, back up to the dock, drag them off into those vats of water, and it would cool them down. But that's because it's done with ammonia now.
That water is cold. That water is 34 degrees. And the peaches stay in there about 30 minutes, and it gets the field heat out of them and stops them from ripening, and it sanitizes them. It's fortified, it's got a lot of chlorine in it that kills any bacteria and sanitizes it completely.
The picking has changed. The first thing used was an oak stave basket with a bale handle, and
the peaches were hauled on wagons out of the orchard to the packing house. From that, they started using a bucket and a bushel box. From the bucket, they went to a picking sack, which was easier on the fruit. And it was also easier on the picker because they had both hands available to pick and not have to carry a bucket.
You know, you'd pick peaches and you'd bring them to what we call the line row. You dump them in these boxes that were lined up for, as I say, some orchards were as much as a mile long. Well, along comes the 20 bushel bins that would actually hold 20 bushels at one time, where we could put them on wagons, and then we no longer use the boxes. We go through the field, and the people picking on either side of what used to be trucks now had wagons with anywhere from, I remember, 8 to 10, 6 bins on it. So you could fill each one of those bins up with 20 bushels of peaches, and then that tractor would pull it out to the end of the field, and we'd have a truck that would hook up to it and pull it on to the packing house. As I saw growing up in the peach business, it had such a significant difference in the amount of labor that was needed originally to stack each box by itself individually on these trucks. Then all of a sudden you go to these bins that it only takes one man to stand about and dump your bucket in there from either side, coming from either side of the field. Well, about the same time the bins came along, then the refrigeration, the cold storage became available. So we would hydrocool the peaches. We would send the peaches through the hydrocooler to take the field heat out, which would sometimes be as high as 100 degrees coming in from the orchards.
Markets nearly 1,000 miles away were not always profitable. With a fruit prone to rot if not delivered in a timely fashion, and an inability to track the condition of the peaches upon arrival, many farmers awaiting checks for their crop were often met with a sizable bill for freight and nothing else. Whether or not the fruit was rotten may be another story.
Once we had some peaches that we shipped to New York, and they graded U.S. Extra #1s here, and we knew we was going to get a good price for them. And finally we kept asking the broker, what about our peaches? And finally, one day he said, well, those peaches were bad when it got there. Well, we knew they wasn't, so we had it investigated, and come to find out the broker was tied up with the federal state inspectors, and he was a partner with a big grocer's chain in Connecticut, right out in New York, and they the one that bought the peaches for a little bit of nothing, and we ended up paying the freight. So that's some of those things are the reason we got out of it.
My family was, I guess I would say, blessed. My grandfather found a peach called the Pearson Highly. It was early, it was freestone, and brought a big price. And my grandfather controlled that peach and didn't let it get widely planted. The problem with it was it didn't taste all that good. It was real tart. The history has it that he received a cable from New York that said, "Dear Mr. Pearson, have received your shipment of 6 cars of Pearson Highlys. When will you send sugar?"
Mr. John Pearson was the oldest of the boys, and he was sort of the ramrod. They called him the hammer. But Mr. John found a sport on an early Highly that he watched. And that became the Pearson Highly. It was a week earlier than the early Highley with a lot of red color. He had it patented, stayed in the family. Mr. Willie Green, who was president of the Bank of Fort Valley at that time, and also the Chevrolet dealer, told me that finding that peach and developing it and growing it was worth $1 million to the economy of Fort Valley.
And the first thing you know, the Pearsons got packing this peach. Everybody got talking, damn, you seen them Pearson Highlands? They just didn't know about it till the peach season got here, you know. And they made a ton of money. I mean a ton of money. All the Pearsons. And they don't want had it.
Early in the peach industry, joining settlers from North Carolina, Virginia, and other counties in Georgia, many families from Ohio settled peach-packing towns across middle Georgia. Names like Miami Valley and Clopine remain, though their peach days are now past. While varieties of peaches have increased tremendously, the 80 or more families in middle Georgia peaches in the 20th century has declined to less than half a dozen. From 24 or more packing houses in Fort Valley alone, only 3 in 2 counties still function. But for the families who do remain, family is key to their success.
We all lived out at the farm. The Diamond is what it was called back then. And we used to have a good time out there in the yard, the children, and they'd have some folks come down from the farm and play basketball with them and put them in a cart, a wagon, and pull them all around the wagon. Then for entertainment in the afternoon, we'd get in the car and go over to the Fullwood farm where Duke was, and find Daddy and play around over there with the peach trees and just have fun out there. And then by that time it was time to come home. And fortunately I had somebody that cooked for me, so we'd always come home to a good meal. So, you know, we've all been in it, and that's all we've known ever since we've been married, you know, was peaches and the children and so forth and so on. And everybody in the, you know, everybody around, you know, had peaches more or less. Not everybody, but I mean, there were a lot of families that did, and we all got along beautifully.
In the early 1920s, Fort Valley became home to one of the biggest festivals in the South. The 1922 Peach Blossom Festival opened the doors of the peach industry to the outside world. It is estimated 1,400 of the town's 4,000 residents participated. 60,000 guests descended upon the peach-packing town, and feeding them was a tremendous endeavor. 10 barbecue pits, each 200 feet long, roasted 40,000 pounds of barbecue, using 400 pounds of salt for seasoning. The pits grew to 600 feet over the next 4 years. Peach kings and queens were crowned. A 4-acre amphitheater hosted endless performances and spectacular pageants. The festival seemed a tremendous success, with 40 acres of land reserved for parking alone. But there was a problem. Outsiders, deeply impressed with the opulence of the peach farmers, began saturating the market with peaches from their own new orchards. The price of peaches plummeted.
The death of the Peach Blossom Festival was because of the fact that everybody was broke. It was booming in the teens and early 20s. The year the most peaches were planted, were shipped, was 20,000 cars.
The market just could not support that many peaches. 1926 was the last year of the Peach Blossom Festivals. After the Civil War, many African Americans newly freed from the bonds of slavery moved from plantations into town in search of work. Fort Valley was no exception, and surrounding agriculture provided many jobs. The African-American labor force enabled the peach industry to flourish, lasting until the early 1980s, when migrant workers slowly began to take over the field and packing house work.
But I had two black fellows that they handled labor. If I had any problem, all I had to do is go to them and say, I don't want him out here no more. I don't want her out here no more. You know. And, you know, back when I started working for my grandpa, he was hauling, had hands coming slamping down there. Oh, I'd say on the other side of Unadilla. And he come up there, you couldn't believe it. It'd be an open truck, you know, with side bodies, and there'd be 50 or 60 of them on that damn truck coming to work. They had to work to eat. It wasn't no damn welfare checks. See what I'm saying? If it didn't work, they didn't eat.
We did not know that we were in poverty until the Kennedy administration. When Kennedy came out and said that if you made a certain income, if you didn't make over a certain income, you were in poverty. And we didn't know this because we ate well, we lived well, and we loved our school, and we loved our activities at our school, and we were quite satisfied. We were quite satisfied with the status quo.
Today, the hand labor still required of peaches is made up almost entirely of Mexican and Central American workers, legally employed on 6-month visas, with few African Americans remaining. The departure followed a time of tremendous progressive change in the southern United States, where civil rights is deeply rooted.
When I got in college, that was the civil rights era came along. And we had some places downtown that we needed to do something about. We had 3 drugstores that did not serve blacks at the counters. And of course, we did what was necessary in that day to integrate those facilities. Two of the places closed their soda shops. And my brother worked at a restaurant called the Fort Valley Canning Kitchen. And that was the place to eat. But they only sold hot dogs. They sold candy and all. And my brother worked for 2 Greeks, Pete and Gus Woogers, who ran a candy kitchen. And they brought from Greece a hot dog sauce that my brother helped them to put together. And for years and years, my brother was offered money for that recipe, but he never gave it up till the day he died. And what happened, he developed something that Fort Valley had never seen before. He was the first to come up with horizontal integration. And what do I mean by that? Blacks and whites didn't sit at the same table to eat back in those segregated days. So what my brother did, my brother took the legs off of the tables, put the chairs away, and had carpenters to extend the legs on the table where everybody stood. And he would put that, he would take that hot dog and put it in that bun, that steam bun, put some onions on there if you wanted there, and put a spoonful of that sauce, and that was 10 cents. And you could eat a bag of them. So, and of course they had fountain Coke. And so blacks and whites stood together and ate hot dogs at the Fort Valley Canning Kitchen.
While it may be difficult for many not to imagine a highly competitive spirit among peach farmers, the truth is a close camaraderie. Georgia peach farmers share every tidbit of information they learn to grow a better peach and stand by each other when times are tough. This unity, as reflected by the Georgia Peach Council, not only is fertile for peaches, it provides a strong foundation from which to control market prices.
We found out that you've got to work together. Years ago, we used to have the buyers on hand. They came around and inspected the peaches at the various packing houses, and it was 8 or 10 packing houses, 20 in this area. And they would come and look at the peaches, and they were buying for commission merchants. They were buying from the stores and whatnot, and they would buy your peaches directly right then. I mean, on that day, and of course they took advantage of the peaches. Sometimes they would come by Pearson's, and Pearson was packing good peaches, and they would come up to Dickey's, and we would be packing good peaches, and they would say, well, I can buy peaches for $2 at Pearson's. I'll buy yours for $1.75. And we were stuck with them or something, couldn't sell them. Then he'd go back to Pearson and said, I just bought some peaches at Dickey's for $1.75. I'll give you $1.75 for yours. Well, that cut the price a quarter right there.
Being a peach farmer means 3 months of the year are dedicated solely to peaches and nothing else. The attention required of peaches means life is a little different from mid-May through August.
We have a saying in the industry, they're kind of jealous. They don't like you doing anything else because they're so time critical that you can't leave them for a 2-week trip to Europe and come back and expect them to be where you left them. So when they're in their final stages, they require a lot of attention in a very time critical manner.
There was no baseball and football practice or whatnot. It was all worked in the peach industry, and you can't hardly find any person that grew up in Peach County, Crawford County, or Macon County or around that did not work in a peach packing house when they were growing up. It was just the thing to do.
I started working in peaches when I was 6, picking up strings upstairs in the loft, and they would work from can to can. When if you picked them, you had to pack them that day. We didn't have cold storage, and so it was not uncommon to pack peaches till 12 or 1 o'clock at night. And I couldn't make it that long, so I'd pick up strings till about 7 or 8, and then I'd fall asleep in the cushions, and my mother would come get me. But summertime was peach time. Everybody worked in peaches. The comments in the spring were, where you working this summer? And peaches didn't start until around the 1st of June. The school system was aligned to where we got out of school early, and so all the kids had places to work and earn some money. It's interesting to me that up until recently, baseball has never been a big deal in Fort Valley. Little League, it just wasn't a deal because everybody was working in peaches.
If you didn't work for your family or some other business that have a summer job, so to speak, I mean, everybody worked in peaches. I mean, it was some 30, 35 packing houses within 30 miles of where I'm sitting right now. So there was plenty of work, and those that didn't work in peaches or didn't have a summer job was sort of frowned upon by the rest of us because we were jealous that they could get off anytime they wanted to and play Little League baseball or go fishing or do whatever they want to do, where we had to work.
For most of the 20th century, nearly everyone who lived in Middle Georgia at some point really did work in peaches. Here, a young United States Senator Sam Nunn can be seen working the packing house, pasting labels on bushel boxes of Tabor peaches. Gone are the days of lines of women in the packing house working as ringers, putting the prettiest peaches on top of a bushel. Also a thing of the past, the hookers and spooners, whose speed and agility determined just how many peaches could be packed on time. And gone are the days of mules and children working the peach farm, but the peach farmers will continue to tell their stories for generations to come.
So there was a conveyor, and it was just a wooden frame thing with a belt that was pulled along this conveyor thing, and it went under the railroad track. And Mr. Hartley, he was the maintenance guy there, And when he had to work on that belt, if that belt ever broke, and I guarantee Byron Duke remember it, you'd have to crawl under that packing house with him, you know, and work on that belt. And I'm telling you, you're talking about scary and spiders and everything else under there. But I can remember climbing on that packing shed with him and pulling on a belt on one end, trying to get it hooked back together.
Back in the 50s, the packing houses were full of, there were a lot of people there, and the ladies wore skirts. They didn't wear blue jeans, and this was all before that. And we worked upstairs in what was called the loft. And in one particular day, a scream went out, and somebody came running to a bunch of us little guys and said, come and look, we need to see something. Well, one of the ladies' dresses had got caught in a chain, and it had taken some of her skirt off, not all of it, but it had taken enough off to reveal a part of her legs that us guys had never seen. And so it was kind of a big event in the packing house that day. And before they got something to cover her up, all the guys went out and saw a lady's legs up to about her knees, which was a big deal to a 6 to 7 year old.
In those days, the peaches came in, and you unloaded the peaches, and you could literally see the fuzz just sort of shivering in the air. I mean, it was just like a glow of peach fuzz. And it just looked like, you know, if you didn't, some people were allergic to it, and you think, me being a peach farmer, it wasn't no big deal to me, but I used to use a lot of baby powder in those days.
You know, when I first come to work up here, my grandpa put me out here long back. I don't know, I've been out here a year or two. And my water wagon about half wore out. And, my grandpa had a shop down there at his farm down at Twin Peaks. Big shop, I'm talking about. Had 3 or 4 people working there, various good mechanics and all. So he maybe just had them make me this water wagon. It was a wagon, for me. Back then, like I say, my grandpa had probably 200 mules, maybe 300. Back when I'm talking about now, in 47 I'm talking about. I didn't have 5 mules up here. Well, this one red mule named Henry. I'll never forget the damn bastard. Henry, he red. Happened right out here too. Right out here where this pecan grove, where it happened at. You got the damn brand new water wagon, had about 150 gallon tank on it, and had about 6 faucets on the back of it. It was a nice water wagon. Done had it, hooked Henry up to the damn wagon. He got out there in the peach orchard, and something spooked the bastard. He took off and tore my damn water wagon slam. I want to get my damn shotgun on that bastard. Tore my water wagon. Red mule named Henry.
Today, Georgia peaches are 3rd in production behind California and South Carolina. But here you will find strong argument Georgia peaches are the sweetest and prettiest and most definitely original American peach. Farmers long enduring shipping up and down the East Coast and all it entails are now looking to sell most, if not all, of their crop locally within the state. Perhaps the days of the roadside stand are not completely forgotten, and perhaps it will help keep more than $30 million in a good year closer to home.